My name's Dave DeBoe, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.
All right, guys, welcome to Property Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Kaminsky, filling in for Dave Dubois. And have you ever been driving down the interstate or strolling slowly through a county and realized that there's only one house on this block where it probably had 10? Well, those lots end up in reutilization programs, and there's people out here doing the work of filling those things back in. Today on the show, I've got Daniel and William, and they're working hard to fill in. I guess it's kind of like infill, but it's got a twist because they're working with the counties to do something about the problem. Daniel and William, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, man. Looking forward to this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so my first question is, you probably didn't start there. That's not an obvious starting position in real estate. Where'd you guys cut your teeth?
Yeah, in the multifamily sector mainly. That's what brought me to Richland County, Ohio. And after buying over about 3 years, about 320 units total, I started realizing those vacant lots you were just talking about. And I'm a contractor by trade. So I started looking into what it takes to develop the lots, site plans, building plans, etc. And then it kind of merged into a full business model.
And so multifamily was the first step. You didn't do single family. You weren't flipping houses, none of that stuff. You just said, I want to go right after apartment blocks.
Correct.
Small ones or big ones, like 30 unit, 50 unit, or 3, 10?
Yeah, we started with a 9 unit, and then we went to a 24 unit. We've bought all the way up to a 90 unit so far.
Nice. So you still actively pursuing the multifamily side of things?
Sure. Yeah, if the right deal comes along, absolutely.
Okay, so for people who don't know, and myself, because I'm a little gray on this subject, what is a reutilization lot?
Well, simply put, it's a lot that where there was a house or a structure of some kind. It doesn't have to be a house. It can be commercial, industrial, residential, whatever it might be. It goes through the land bank reutilization program where they get federal funding to tear it down, to build grade, and then they seed and straw it and hope that a developer has interest in, putting something back on that lot. So we've found success in putting duplexes and triplexes because they fall under residential code, and we don't have to venture into commercial. So those lots they're listed with that county land bank. You go into the land bank, you have to apply for it. You can't just go in and buy 500 of the lots because they're cheap. You have to apply, submit your plans, submit your proof of funds, your concept, experience, etc. And then they have a board meeting, which they vote if they sell it to you or not. And then you're kind of off and running from there. That's the simple version.
So they're doing like a little bit of check and balance to make sure that people aren't just buying them and sitting on them again. They want to see it filled in.
Yes, correct.
I think they had an issue where they had one guy who bought a couple and then like listed them a few months later for full asking price market value, and they were like, okay, we can't. No. So
yeah, they strictly are for redevelopment purposes.
Yep.
So when it comes down to, because like one of the biggest things that holds people back from redeveloping land, especially here in my market, is, once you add the land and the build, it's kind of a negative opportunity. Like you look at it, you're like, oh, so I'm gonna lose 30K to do this? I don't think so. So people don't do it until the land maybe comes down in price, or maybe they can figure out how to make the build cheaper or more dense. Maybe they have to go through variances to get it to make it profitable. What sort of advantage do you feel that these lots allow you in the game?
Well, yeah, that's the exact reason why most people don't build in our market as well. These lots offer an advantage because they're being sold through a 501c3 nonprofit. So they're not being sold at market value. Typically, we pay around $300 to $3,000 per lot. So, and not only with that, we're also getting the infrastructure in place. So we're not having to supply a well, a septic, run, gas lines, power lines. So we're typically taking over a property that there was a home. Sometimes we do have to do variances and, go through planning commission, things like that. But mainly because what we're trying to build might not have fit in that neighborhood before. But our county alone has knocked down, I think, over 1,500 homes since they were created, the land bank.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of demand for housing because they lost 1,500 homes, over the course of 10 years. So, um, as far as our entry costs, we are able to get in typically permits, land, site plan, architect plans under $10,000. So that's not we haven't. I'm from Alaska originally, and you couldn't get in a lot for 100,000, and then you'd
Mm-hmm.
still have to bring in your sewer, septic, things like that. So our advantage is the cost of the land and the product. That's why we can keep our product price down.
So what do you do when you're done with these things? Are you able to sell them off when you're done, or is there a stipulation you have to continue to hold them, or what's the situation there?
Yeah, so there are deed restrictions typically on these lots. However, if you're upfront with your plans, prior to the purchase, again, when you go before the board and talk, we've built several rentals. Last year we did do a couple single family homes, and we were able to sell them. And we were able to secure a park. It was a park that was given to the land bank by the city, and we were able to put 6 single family homes on it.
Mm.
Again, our costs were minute. We paid $3,000 for the land. So we was able to split that cost up between 6 homes and still be profitable. So
Nice. Because then, yeah, like I mean, that's the big thing when I was down there in Cleveland, we were talking before the show. It's just how quickly and how unapologetically they remove houses. It's just
yeah,
the crew comes in and you kind of know it. They got the pile of grass ready to go and they straw it and it's done and it's a hole in the ground and it's filled in and
yep,
it's done. And in those houses, I mean, there's reasons, right? These things are
for
done.
sure.
Like these houses are absolutely done in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And specifically in whole neighborhoods, it's just like, it starts to cascade. People don't want to live on that street anymore because there are
Mm-hmm.
only like 2 houses. It's starting to get maybe unsafe feeling because people are starting to roam or dump on these properties. So, it's a good idea that they're starting that push to really fill them back in and incentivizing it. We don't really have that sort of we don't really have that sort of challenge here on our density in Canada. That's just, if a house is 1% salvageable, someone will throw 150 grand at it and bring it all the way back because to start again would cost about the same. So you might as well just deal with what you got. Now, that that kind of business is likely, it sounds capital intensive in the strategy of, okay, you're going to get multifamily. That's capital intensive usually. But are you able to get additional financing and things like that to do these constructions, or then is that where the capital comes in on this?
Yeah, I mean, we prefer to use outside capital for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
One thing that we do typically get as an incentive to buy and build on these lots is typically they're in a community reinvestment area. So we're able to negotiate up to a minimum 50% tax abatement for 15 years on that property, whether it's sold to a homeowner or kept as a rental.
That follows the property, not the owner, by
Correct.
the way.
Yep. And there's also a tax increment financing where if the property were to need, infrastructure as far as sewer, typically we don't find that because we're building on infill lots is pretty much what they are. That's a great way to look at it. We just like to buy where there's at least 5 in a row because we want to build minimum in 3s just for, economy to scale and things like that, and also to impact the neighborhood. Because once these houses are built, they're appraised based on the square footage cost to build, not the comps down the street. So we're raising property, and that's the goal of the land bank is to reduce blight and incentivize development. So we're raising property values, but we're also getting a tax abatement to go with it.
And so is this primarily focused in Ohio, or as we were talking about before, there's some counties across the United States, but is Ohio as a total like the hotbed of it, or what does that work? How does that work?
Detroit. Yeah, Michigan's actually Michigan is actually where the land bank was created originally and passed through legislation. Now, Ohio, is pretty strong. You mentioned Cleveland, Cuyahoga County. They have the largest performing land bank, to date. However, they use government funding, different financing options for their projects. And I'm not 100% certain on their numbers, but since their opening of the Cuyahoga County Land Bank, I think they've built 12 structures, since, which is impressive for the government side of it. But privately, using private equity, we've been able to build, we'll have, by the end of 2024, we'll have put 90 units total in the ground since 2020 on land bank lots. So private capital is definitely the way to go for scalability.
Yeah,
for
because
sure.
you look at it and the government's usually not all that well suited to do housing.
Correct.
It
Yeah,
usually
agreed.
takes that, there's, it's kind of like the saying, like people aren't going to solve uh plastic in the ocean until it's profitable. Until someone's like, oh, I can make money digging that plastic out. Suddenly he's refinancing, he's got joint venture capital and he's got massive machines out on the ocean cleaning it up because it's profitable, right?
Yep.
So it's only when the profit is there that action seems to take place. Now, when you're looking at this, is this the future of your business? Is this all guns blazing on this project? And how long can you run this thing out for?
Oh, I mean, forever. I mean, so the land bank started in 2012, 2013, somewhere in there.
Yep.
And they're only expanding. So I mean, it's moving out towards the west. So the more it catches on, when we can just follow it and just keep scaling. So there's a 3,000 door shortage here in Richland County for housing. I mean, we could spend all our time just in Richland County and barely make a dent probably in the next 15 years. So the scalability is there. Do you want to get into mod at all, or?
Yeah.
So we're kind of leaning towards modular as well, which would be more of a drag and drop. Your plumbing, electrical, all that stuff is done in house, so it's just drag and drop to the site. All you gotta do is put in the crawl space or whatever you need over there.
The footing or whatever, yeah.
So we won't have to worry about getting like acreage to build side by side and have the subs all in the same place, just banging out stuff. We could go to different states and different areas of Ohio, just dragging and dropping. So that's kind of the longer term vision for sure.
Yeah, the modular stuff is cool, but every time you walk into the government office with a modular plan, they're like, take your Happy Meal box house out of here. I don't want it. They want I think it's like a trades thing. Like they want you to build it. They want it to be a structure that if it's so easy to bring here, then it's so easy for it to leave, right? If you could drop it, then you can pick it up. And that's
Right.
really, they look at the modular, a lot of the modular stuff as borderline mobile park build, and so I have seen some interesting stuff with like modular kit stuff where it's
wall sections and things like that.
Comes in as like a kit and saves a lot of the fabrication time on site, because otherwise, like, they're just delivering pallets of lumber. Like it's like 1905 and here's the lumber, boys. and it's like, let's mix up the concrete, and it's like a very traditional build style. That's what they want to see. That's what the permit department's like. It's very, measurable, and they're like, oh yeah, it's the way it's always been. And it's like, I feel like, and maybe you guys can and chime in on that. I feel like housing is almost held back by the tradition of construction. Like we could have so many more houses and solve so many more affordability crises as if we just embraced rapid construction. Because one thing that I don't know if you guys have those in the States. In Canada, they did a post-war project called strawberry box houses. So what they essentially did is they built the house in two halves, put it on a train, and everywhere the train line runs, on each side of the train line are these new developments in 1940s. No basement, crawl space. They take the house, bolt it together, and it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, kitchen, and they built, they were building, I think they were building one house every 36 hours or something. So they just turned it into like a production thing to solve the problem. But that's when the government said, yeah, how do you guys fight the modular fight when the government's saying not so much?
Well, interesting enough, I think there's a pretty common misperception with modular and manufactured. So I come from construction background and have been stick building homes, for the last 15 years. And I will say that the modular plan, we've worked with Champion Home Builders, and they're a nationwide modular. I've toured their plant. They have several plants all over the United States. They're building with 2x6 walls, construction that the materials never see the outside. They're not exposed to the weather. So it's not the traditional trailer box housing, because these are all coming on they're being bolted down to a footer, a crawl space, as you said. So it's 36 inches below to grade. They're being bolted on top of that. So the bank will appraise it as a real home. I mean, they're doing now, Champion Homes is now doing apartment complexes. They're doing hotels. They've gotten really creative with their design. And I think that's changing the perception of modular housing, because I wasn't a big fan. I grew up, I lived in trailers. I've had family. Yeah, you're using 2x2 walls, right? They're a little shell with aluminum siding. This is the new modular route's taken a different turn. Because to your point, I think that's the only option to solve the affordability, attainable housing crisis that we all have. They're in every county that we go to. We have different communities reaching out, asking us to come build, which is great for us because we'll always have work, but it's not going to solve a problem. I mean, as Dan said, we're
It's like a
3,000 short in our
speed
county.
problem. The capital's
Exactly.
there, the lots are there, the
Correct.
ability to build the house in a timely fashion,
Yep.
not quite there yet. Like that's the
Yep.
bottleneck. So how far are you guys along on cracking the code on allowing them to move that out? Because I'm assuming that once you set a precedent in the county or the state, then it's like, let's go.
We've got approval for modular. In 2020 is when we started building stick frame, and that's the COVID years when it really is taken off. We had a contract with Champion Homes. We signed on the dotted line for 100 duplexes. They were going to deliver 2 a week on our crawl spaces, and we were going to solve 200 units of rental housing. Well, we had the pricing where it was still within our budget. When COVID happened, it kind of, it stopped the world, right?
No kind of about it, man.
Yeah, it stopped the world. So they stopped production. They stopped, the factory stopped, wood stopped, all those things stopped. So since then, now we're in 2024, they still haven't caught back up to the demand. So we've got approval for modular housing, if based on specs, engineered specs that we have. The problem now is getting the right manufacturing company to grab hold of the product and be able to produce it. You can't even get them to give you an 8-week time frame because they're so backed up. Champion Homes, and we had a great relationship, and we signed, had it financed. Now they're like, look, we can't even take on any projects right now. So I think it's more of just identifying the right partnership with the right manufacturing company. And our focus is that affordable, attainable housing market. For example, the single family homes that we built, they're about 1,100 square feet, 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 1-car garage. We were able to build and sell them profitably at 180,000. That was our sale price. So with modular, even if we had to sacrifice a little bit of profit, we could make that up in volume and be solving a big need. For example, every house when it was finished, and we can do a house about 90 to 120 days. I mean, weather permitting. We do live in Ohio. But they were within contract within the first week. So the product is there. We're just working on implementing the right system to take that product anywhere it's needed.
Yeah, and you look at it too, and some of the houses would take 90 to 120 days to fix, even if they were still standing. So it's like which one, which battle do you want to fight? So the, that's certainly a capital game. You've got like a contract for 100 at, I don't know, what's the material cost on the modular, like 80, something like that, 70K per
Yeah.
unit or something.
Yep.
So now you're talking about what is that? My math's bad. It's either 7 million. Is that it? Is that the number?
For the 100,
Yeah,
yeah.
170K. So where's the capital come from? What sort of partnerships or alliances are saying, hey, I got 70 million or 7 million to really roll this out?
It's a conglomerate of accredited investors. We're still working on a few institutions that we've talked to over the past couple months that, potential fund of funds and a couple broker dealers potentially. They just want to see that because it's hard to convince people that you have the development figured out in this market. I mean, it's tough. Like inflation's up, rates are up, it's nuts. So to make people see that, understand that it's like it's basically bulletproof, it's very difficult to do. So we're still working the kinks on that as well. But moving forward, it'll be primarily retail investors going forward, I think, until we have the more proven concept, and then we kind of approach some more institutions. But
yeah, because I can imagine, if you could crack the code on it, you could almost turn it into like an assembly line. Like
yeah,
if you've got the footings, you could do footings all season and drop
right.
houses all year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even in the colder weather, you could probably still drop them and finish them. So
Yep.
with the investors that you have now, what sort of reporting or transparency? Because building is its own thing, construction and its own thing. So as opposed to, you've been on the multifamily side, there's a certain amount of like reporting that's important. Is it full? Is it empty?
Yeah.
Where are the numbers at? But when you're doing these new construction, how do you keep your investors apprised of progress and things of that nature?
Primarily email correspondence. We do have a investor portal as well.
Okay.
So everything they can track everything that's going on in that. I'm working with the portal right now because the portal we have is very like it's property specific. So I'm trying to make it to where it's like basically a revolving door fund or a project within the portal where they can just kind of put their money in and it'll go to a land bank lot. I don't want to have to go through and like put on every single land bank lot that we're building on with, because technically it's basically the build costs are always primarily going to be the same within probably 20 to 25 grand difference in most cases.
Yeah.
And then the list price is definitely going to vary depending on where we go and the market we're getting into. So I'm working on that end, but I'll get that hammered out here in the next couple of weeks.
So what do you think go
Go
ahead.
ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, what do you think the biggest misconception is when people sit down to talk to you about investing in the project?
I'd say land cost.
And time frame. They can't fathom a house going up in 120 days, start to finish. And they also can't fathom a $300 acre and a half somewhere. It blows their mind. So
Well, when you think about it, you look at a lot of the houses in Ohio, they're all pretty much the same. Like, you're not reinventing the wheel. Does it have a front porch? Does it have
a big one?
Yeah, does it have the one that goes all the way across and then it's like a two-story looking thing? Yeah, it's like every house in Ohio. So it's
well, I have a stat for
really
you and the listeners.
sure.
So every single family house in the US was built before 1989. Or I'm sorry, 80% of all homes built in the US were built before 1989.
Yeah.
Is that crazy?
Well,
Insane.
I heard on another interview that there was you're something like 4 or 5 million houses short
Yeah.
Yeah.
nationally.
Yep.
In Canada, so in perspective, so right, you've got 400 million people and you're 4 million short. Not too bad. In Canada, we're 40 million and we're 4 million short.
Wow.
So if you look at the marketplaces and why property is so much more expensive, you've got a single family house in Cleveland for $32,000. And if you go over the lake, that house is, seven or $800,000. It's because of
Yeah.
the squeeze. And it's even worse here. It's even worse to construct, that the government's now stepped in, starting to do the financing on it to kind of ease the pressure of it. But it still doesn't change the fact that there's like a run up. You can't just build a million houses next year. It's going to
Yeah.
take, and every year you fall further behind. So the deficit grows and the amount of houses new don't outpace the deficit. So it just gets worse and worse and worse. So I don't know what the ending is, but it is definitely good to see that someone's doing something with those lots. And where did the idea come from? How did it get into your head?
Well,
He stumbled upon it.
Yeah, simply put, the 9 unit that we bought had an abandoned, not abandoned, it was a condemned commercial structure. And I kept asking around, like, hey, what's going on with that building? I have interest. I just invested time and money into a 9 unit apartment complex. And then someone told me that it will probably go to the land bank to get demolished. And I was like, oh, I didn't know what that was. I mean, I had no idea. And they said you should talk to the land bank. There's opportunity there for developers. And since that's my background, I went in and met them. And when I started asking questions like, how do I get one of these lots, right? Because they told me they had 500 lots. They sent me, I was in there for almost 3 hours going through their Excel sheet. How do you get one of these lots and what's the price? Well, when she told me if we approve of your plans and your cost, your proof of funds and things like that, there's a particular lot I was looking at, we'll sell it to you for $300. I didn't, if I wouldn't have been sitting there, I probably wouldn't have believed it. Just, and I said, well, I'll buy like 100 of them right now. I mean, what are we waiting on? She goes, well, you got to go through our progress or our process, make sure, and we got to track your progress, see how you do. So that's where, and I went back to Alaska thinking, man, there's got to be something with that. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But when you start looking into them, their entire goal and mission is to revitalize those areas. So they're a nonprofit. So they're taking a lot that you could probably sell in the open market for, let's say 10 to 12,000.
Maybe, but that's the thing, maybe, in a
Yeah,
lot of
sure.
cases, kind of, it's worthless until someone puts worth into it.
Until someone puts work into it. So now that we've done this in our area, the land bank they've popped off, I think, 50 of their lots and counting that other developers are about. So we're trying to actually encourage other developers to do it. If we can help, great. But I mean, we're never going to touch the demand, and every one that's built, the values just go up. They just keep going up. So I mean, and it's better for the community. I mean, a lot of those tenants that we have over the multifamily that we have, I mean, we're buying units that need completely renovated. We're buying units that are costing a lot of money to renovate and buy. So the dollar for dollar in your returns are pretty close with new construction. Really, when you're considering your lots are so inexpensive and we're building economically.
Welcome to Canada. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's the only way through, because building here is even worse. It hasn't been. It's probably been since like 2017 where it made sense to build a single family home on a lot that you can make 20 grand on. So
yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, it's just after COVID, like you guys were saying, the labor cost, the material costs, it went from like $115 a square to like, I think it's like 175 a square or 210 a
To
square.
build.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
not doesn't include the land, it doesn't include the
Yeah.
permits, it doesn't include the variances. So,
Mhm.
and the house is only going to be worth 1,000 square feet, maybe 230 or 240.
Yeah.
So you got to get the land for -10. So they have to
Yeah.
like, but then they want 110 for the lot plus 200,000 to build the thing. So now you're at 300 and it's only going to sell for 240. So guess what happens? Nothing. The
Yeah.
lot sits there, and it's good that the land bank is coming in, because I was, back in the day, I was in Cleveland. I was like, what are they going to do with all these things? Like, they're knocking them down like crazy. Uh, and I never see them selling them. So they must have been land banking them even back in the day.
Yeah.
When you look at the future for the investor pool, are they like, what's the margin on something like that, if you don't mind me asking? So you're getting it for nothing. You're spending like 100 something thousand to do the job. So you're doing like 60K a door, 60K a turn on each of those buildings that you're putting together. Is it
Yeah.
costing
So
120K to build that thing?
yeah. So simple numbers. Our build budget with is 120,000 with land. So our sale price is 170, and we can do a house in about build and sell within that 120 to 160 days. And that's, now keep in mind, when you're doing six in a row, you're not, it's not 120 days per house. I mean,
No, you're
you're
doing all
concrete,
of them at the
there's
same time. Yeah.
exactly. So every house averages, you know, I would say about a 35, conservatively 35 to $45,000 profit margin per bill in that 3 month period. So we're able to offer a great return because we're taking that same funds and we're building three of them. That's it, using the stick frame build, the
Yeah.
model. So we're
So
building
what's the
300.
bottleneck? What's the true bottleneck in your business when you're looking at it and saying like, is it the land bank speed of deployment of the land?
No, I think the bottleneck truly is just not being able to produce at a clip that modular could produce at.
Mm.
I mean, because we're juggling, 10 different subcontractors for every trade to try and match their schedule, match their, we've got the budget pretty much down because they're simple, simple
Mhm.
builds, but it's the availability and then weather. And now you're fighting weather too. So I think the bottleneck truly is the scalability of the modulars. We've talked about it, extensively. It's the modular.
Yeah,
That's the
and
direction we have to
Ohio's
go.
weather is, it could be completely sunny and then you could get like rain you can't see through the windshield for
Yeah,
10 minutes and then sunny again. So like good luck pouring your concrete. Like
exactly.
just pour it and pray.
Yep.
Everyone's doing, you got a priest blessing the concrete before it's going down.
Yeah.
So
And the modular, the build cost wise is comparable to where we're already at. So it just makes sense for us.
yeah, next
The
step.
build cost is comparable. The difference is where we'd get, because you're still spending the same amount for your foundation. So you still got to put your driveway in, you still got to connect your power, you still got to, pour your concrete for your crawl space. So I would say on a modular, we'd probably go up to 145 to 150, but we'd be able to do, I mean, Champion could produce us two duplexes a week. So
So you think you
you're
can
gonna
make it up in the speed?
we'd make
Oh,
it up in the
yeah.
speed, and we're targeting bigger areas now. So before we were using scattered sites. Now we're working with communities where they'll have a park or an old
Or you're
softball
gonna like
field or a
do a
baseball field.
small neighborhood.
We want to go in and put in minimum 40 homes in an area with the infrastructure in place. Because with modular, you got to have a crane. It's a pretty intense system. So you moving that crane from one site to another site, you got mobilization
Yeah, it
fees. So
doesn't make sense. If you could just stack
correct.
it up in the middle and just have it set up and move them
Yep.
all, and truck
Yep.
shows up, move the
Yeah.
one, truck shows up, move the next. All the foundations are set. It's move-in day and then finishing, exterior finishing or whatever you got to do.
Yep.
That's it.
So, um, sounds very interesting. I think people should reach out to you guys and probably throw some money at the idea because it's probably the easiest way to solve a lot of the housing challenges you're seeing in the United States. And hopefully we can adopt some of that mindset here in Canada, but maybe probably not for 10 years. So if people want to
It's
connect with you guys and find out more how they can invest, the name of the company again is,
Keystone Capital.
there you go. And so how do they
And
connect with you? How do they find out more about what you guys are doing?
our investor portal is keystone-capital.investnext.com. We're still working on the landing page for the website. We haven't really needed one thus far. Kind of like being off the radar, but I think it's smart to kind of get a digital footprint now. Will
And they can
has,
see the project progress, videos, all that stuff.
yep,
Where do they
yep.
find that stuff?
That would be also the portal. Yep.
Okay,
So
cool.
they would just create an account, log in, and they can see all that stuff. So
Very cool. All right, well, yeah, very interesting. Good job, guys, taking on a big project like that. I appreciate the hard work.
Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Until next time, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Yes, sir.
Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewyou.com. Now at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.